Hello beautiful people, thank you so much for clicking on this video. So I am back with another addition to this podcast, and today we will be looking at how to get closer to God. So firstly, the reason why I decided to do this topic is just because having a relationship with God has really helped me in my life. So I thought, you know what, this is a good topic to talk about because maybe this video could help someone. But anyway, before I start, I just want to give a disclaimer that this is just my opinion. You may agree with me, you may not agree with me, but this is just me sharing my opinion. Okay, so the first point is communication. If you want to get close to God, you have to be able to communicate with God. The simplest way to visualize it is, let's say you're trying to speak to someone. You're trying to speak to another human being. The more you speak to them, the more they'll respond. And I found that the more you actually speak to God, the more God will respond to you. And you're probably thinking, well, how does God respond? The answer is, God will respond in lots of different ways. It can be through an experience. Sometimes you'll have an experience and then you'll see that God has actually revealed himself to you in that experience. Also, it could be through dreams and through visions. Sometimes you'll have a dream, like this has happened to me. I've had a dream and it's been like a warning of something to come. And through that dream, it has helped me to maybe like avoid a particular situation because I've been warned in a dream. It's just that sort of thing. So the more you actually pray and the more you speak to God, the more you'll find that God will speak back to you, and he can respond back to you in any form. Like when you open the scriptures, sometimes you will just see a particular verse, and that is just what you needed at that point in your life. That line or that verse that you read can give you hope to keep moving forward. Oh, and another way, right, but God can speak to us even through nature. Sometimes you might be praying or you might just be thinking about someone or something, and you will just see things in nature and you realize God is actually communicating to you through nature. It could be all of a sudden you're praying or you're thinking about something and you just see the sun coming out, or you might hear thunder or something. Like, I know it sounds kind of crazy, right? It does sound crazy, but this has happened to me. Like sometimes I'll be praying or something's like happening and then I will hear like thunder or I hear something. I'll be like, oh wow, this really does feel like God is speaking to me. Okay, so the next thing I want to share with you in terms of getting closer to God is focusing on your environment. Certain environments will bring you closer to God and other environments will make you get further away from God. And again, I just take it back to that kind of example of having a conversation with someone. If you want to get to know someone, if you want to have a conversation with them, you're not going to go to the noisiest place where there's loads of traffic and there's loads of noise. You're going to find a quiet place where you can talk to them. And likewise, you have to look at your environment, look at the people that you are interacting with, that you are associating with. Is that an environment where God can come close to you and where you can get close to God? If you are in an environment where there's a lot of negative energy, it's going to be hard to get closer to God, but it's going to be harder to elevate. So that's why I say it's really important that you choose an environment that will inspire you to make a difference and to make a positive impact on the world. Another thing that is really important, right, if you're trying to get closer to God, is that you need to spend time alone. But I'm not saying that you should isolate yourself and you should be alone all the time. But I found that spending time alone and just having time of solitude can really help you to connect with God. And also, if you look at the scriptures, you find that people that are close to God in the scriptures, they always have time that they spend alone. When there's a lot of distractions and when there's a lot of things around you, you can't always focus. And sometimes, even if it's just for a small period of time, just being able to remove yourself from people, from distractions, from everything, and just being able to sit by yourself in solitude and pray and speak to God, it can help you to focus on God and focus on what God is saying in your life, rather than focusing on the distractions or focusing on what other people say. Other people will say things and it can drown out the voice of God. So for example, if you have someone that's constantly telling you you are stupid, if you have someone in your life, right, and they're constantly telling you stupid or they're constantly telling you you're not smart, then over time you will start to believe that and you will not be able to elevate and you'll not be able to get close to God. You'll just say to yourself, oh, well, God, I'm stupid. What's the point of praying? What's the point of trying to get close to you if I'm stupid and I can't do anything productive in the world? So the best thing is to spend time by yourself sometimes, because when you spend that time by yourself, you can really remove yourself from distractions, and you can allow God to really reveal himself to you and to communicate with you. Okay, so the next point, right, I would say creativity. God is a creator. So as a human being, when we create something, we actually get closer to God. Obviously, it depends on what you're creating, but in that process of creation, there is an ability to get closer to God. For example, when you are creating something out of nothing, you might be in a situation, right? And in that situation, there's only darkness. There's nothing good. But then you being there, you are a creator and you create light in the darkness. There's nothing but suffering and pain. But as the creator, with the creative ability that God has given to you, you bring joy to that situation of suffering. Likewise, in a drought, when there's nothing growing, you plant a seed and you put something into someone. You might come across somebody that literally, they're struggling in their life, but you just say something to them. It could be a word of motivation or a word of inspiration, and you plant that seed in them. And maybe it's the first time anybody said something nice to them. And by you planting that seed, you are creating something within them. Anytime when there is an ability to create something positive, right, that is an opportunity where you can get close to God. Even if you say to yourself, you're not a creative person, you don't necessarily have to be creative in order to be a creator. And in order to create something, you do not have to be creative. It could be creating connections. It could be just creating a welcoming environment. You may know someone who has gone through a really difficult experience, but then just inviting them in your presence and being accepting and welcoming towards them, you are creating that welcoming environment, and that is going to help them. So you don't necessarily have to be creative, and what you're creating does not necessarily need to be tangible. It could just be a welcoming atmosphere or positive energy. That is you creating positive energy. That's still creating something. Also, if you are particularly creative, for example, if you like to tell stories, or you like to make content, or you play an instrument, or you like me and you like music, even in that process of creating, it is an opportunity to get close to God, because it's an opportunity to bring out an experience. Maybe people that don't have a voice, they read a line in something that you've written, in a poem or in a song, and they're able to relate with that experience. It could be you're creating something and it gives them hope, or it gives them motivation. So anytime when you're creating something, that is a chance to get close to God. And in the process of creating, it can bring you closer to God. So one of the things I would say is definitely think about what you're creating in your life. Whether you're creative or not, just think about what you are creating, because that will give you an opportunity to get closer to God, providing you are creating responsibly and you're being responsible and making sure that what you're creating is going to have a positive effect. So my final point, this is kind of complex, and it actually took me a while to kind of figure this point out in my mind. But the point is, when God created us, and we first came to this earth, right? It says that God created us in his image. So when we are first made, we are made like God, meaning there are similarities between us and between God. But I feel that as we get older, right, and as we move through the world, it is easy to become more world-like, because you're spending more time in the world, and it is only natural that the more you stay in an environment, the more you absorb and you take in that environment. So the more time we spend in the world, the more time we become world-like. But when we are first created as babies, when we first take our first breath, we are created in the image of God, and we are created like God. So this is the thought I had, right? If we want to get closer to God, we have to try to go back to that time when we were first born and when we first came to earth. And we have to try to realize that before anything, we were made like God, and we have that potential within us to be similar to God, because we are made in his image. And the more time we spend with God, the more we will realize our power, and we will realize how much like God we can be in this world. And this means, you see, the more that you realize that, the more you will be like God, in the sense of you will be more childlike, in the sense that you will always be open to learning, to improving, getting better, and to develop yourself. Because the thing is that when you're an adult, you kind of feel like, oh, I'm an adult now, I've spent a lot of time in this world, I'm experienced, I know it all. But when you're a child, most children, they're always open to learning, right? They want to learn more about the world, they are curious, and I feel like you've got to be like that. You've always got to be open to learning more about the world and learning more about God and wanting to constantly get closer. A baby will just love and trust quite easily. We've got to be able to love everyone around us. Like literally, you've got to be able to love rather than judge. You've got to spend more time loving. And if you spend a lot of time with children, you'll realise that they get joy easily. And in us being more godlike, we have to be able to find joy easily and find joy within God and within ourselves, rather than looking to your situation or to your circumstance. So really, to summarise this point, is just realising that God created us in the image of himself. And in order for us to get closer to God, we just have to realise that God has created us to be more like him, and realise the power that God has given us. And you see, the thing is, the more you realise your power, the more you will start doing in your life, because you'll realise that God's given you power to actually make changes in the world, to make changes in yourself, and to do more than you thought you could do. So yeah, that was the end of the video. Stay tuned for part 2. I'll be back, and yeah, more videos coming soon, so stay tuned. Bye.